Hello, my fellow divers, and welcome back to another Super Earth approved broadcast. I'm Operative Arthdale, and in today's video, we're going to be covering the brand new Redacted Regiment Warbond. We're going to be going over it page by page and breaking down what every single piece of gear does and how good it is. But before we get into the Warbond, I do want to state that if you're not a fan of sneaking around, of using stealth and sabotage, this Warbond probably isn't for you. If your preferred playstyle is blowing stuff up and running headfirst at that charger stampeding towards you, you might want to pick up a different Warbond. Unless you love the Hell Drip, it is top tier in this Warbond in my opinion, so, there's always that. Now, starting off with the first page, let's go over the cosmetic items. We have the Pillar of the Abyss player card and cape, also 100 super credits, and the RS-92 Shadow Paragon helmet, which pairs nicely with the matching light armor, which has the reduced signature passive. This passive is probably, in my opinion, the best stealth passive in the game. The wearer makes 50% less noise when moving, and it reduces the range at which enemies can detect the wearer by 40%. Basically, it turns every enemy into Velma without her glasses. You can walk or straight up run right by some enemies, and the detection range for, say, gunship towers and mortar encampments is also reduced, letting you get closer to them before being detected, or even letting you sneak right into the encampment without raising any alarms, making it perfect for splitting off from the main team and getting those side and tactical objectives done, which really leans into how good stealth can really be in this game. Now, naturally, the armor is more useful on the bot front, where stealth is overall more useful and, can be used more, but it can see some niche uses against the squids. Against the bugs, though, you're probably better off just picking something else. Also, on the first page, we have two new weapons, the P35 Re-Educator and the R72 Sensor, but let's start with the P35 Re-Educator. This is a one-handed special sidearm that fires gas darts instead of regular bullets or explosives in a 6-round magazine. The initial projectile does 60 damage and causes a 6-second gas DOT that does 25 damage per second. It also has heavy penetration to top things off. In my opinion, this thing is pretty bad. To me, the strength of gas is usually being able to afflict it to multiple enemies at once, by using, say, the sterilizer, gas grenades, or the gas orbital strike, to take out or confuse large groups so you can either do an objective or escape. So this being a single target weapon really dampens its strength, because it effectively becomes a tool to eliminate or at least neutralize a single threat, which, don't get me wrong, can still be useful, but there are many other options for that are just better, even just within the secondary slot alone. I think it's definitely a fun weapon that really leans into the flavor of stealth gameplay, and I think I can, see niche case uses for it, but effectively there are much better options. To round it out though, it's best against bots where you won't be getting swarmed as often, and against the bugs and squids, there's not really much reason to bring it. The other weapon on this page is the R72 Sensor Marksman Rifle. It deals 165 damage with light armor penetration, and it has a built-in integrated suppressor. It has a 20-round magazine to start off with, and not really too much recoil, with a 400 rounds per minute fire rates. As for the attachments, the sight is diver's choice, pick whatever you're comfortable with, and for the underbarrel, I would just recommend the vertical foregrip to help mitigate whatever recoil is there. This weapon's strength is being able to pick off lone targets and to make paths for you to sneak through to get to objectives and other high value areas, but it rewards skill because you really need to land your shots and take down your targets with a single round. Because of how stealth works in this game and how finicky it can be, if you miss or use multiple rounds, you'll probably just alert the enemies around you and start an all-out firefight, which this weapon isn't necessarily super strong in. Its raw damage is weaker than a lot of the other marksman rifles, and it's only light pin, putting you at a disadvantage if everything goes full loud in a firefight starts. I just think it's a great stealth tool and one of, if not the best stealth weapon in the game for that playstyle, but it still has the drawbacks most stealth tools do. That being in all-out firefights, they're almost always the weaker option, and the fact that this game is mostly, firefights and explosions and chaos, it, makes it strong in its niche and when it's used in that playstyle, but weaker in more general situations and most of the time. It's also strongest against bots where stealth in general is more useful, and even though it's light pin, you should have no problem lining up those sweet spot kills with a bit of time and practice. It's generally less useful against the bugs and the squids where you can get ganged up on by smaller units where precision tools are usually swapped out in favor of crowd clearing tools. Moving on, we have page 2. Let's start with the cosmetics. We have the Triangulation Veil player card and cape, 100 super credits, and the RS67 Null Cypher helmet and armor, which comes with the same reduced signature armor passive, but this time on a medium armor set. Finally, we have the weapon on this page, the AR-59 Suppressor Assault Rifle. It deals 80 damage with light penetration and a built-in suppressor. It has a default mag capacity of 45 rounds with a recoil stat of 13 and a fire rate of 850 rounds per minute. This weapon is pretty interesting because it has an integrated suppressor but low damage at 80, which is 10 less than the default Liberator and the Liberator Carbine, which kind of makes it, well, bad at stealth. The low damage is going to enable you to headshot only the lowest of the low units, and that's basically it. Anything with a slightly higher health pool won't die and will instead get alerted like a Metal Gear Solid enemy and call for reinforcements. Its real strength is being the stealth weapon for when stealth fails. If stealth fails with, say, the other weapon in this Warbond, the R-72 sensor, and a full fight breaks out, the marksman rifle might not be able to keep up with the multitude of enemies headed straight for you. But, an assault rifle with a 45 round magazine that can be upgraded to 60 rounds with a drum mag attachment, that has a fire rate of 850 rounds per minute, well, that might come in handy when your plan fails. Are there better options? Absolutely. Will this be a guilty pleasure weapon for me? 100%. It's also safe to say that, like most stealth tools, this is best against the bots, but due to its high fire rate and magazine capacity, it can hold its own against the smaller units of the bugs and the squids, but there's not much of a reason to pick it over any other assault rifle on those two fronts. Finally, we have the third and final page, so let's start with its cosmetics, which are the target-sighted victory pose, the redacted title, and 100 super credits. For the gear, we have the Concealed Insertion Booster, the TM-1 Lure Mine Throwable, and the C4 Pack Permit. So let's go through them in that order. The Concealed Insertion Booster deploys a smokescreen on Helldiver deployment. The one thing I'll say is it's the best Helldiver deployment booster because it won't kill you and your teammates like the Firebomb Hellpods will. It'll actually mask your deployments. Say your friend dropped you in a bad spot. You come out of your Hellpod in front of an army of bots, just a straight firing squad. You'll have the smokescreen up to make the enemy accuracy worse, they won't have line of sight on you, and you have a chance to escape or at least get your support weapons down to, fight back. Ultimately, I think it has niche uses, and it's definitely the best Hellpod booster, but yeah, nowhere near top tier or not really any reason to pick it. Next up, the TM-1 Lure Mine. It's a sticky mine that can, stick to most surfaces. Once deployed, it'll attract all nearby enemies to it, where when they get close, it'll explode for 1000 damage in an 8-meter radius with level 5 anti-tank pin. Overall, it's pretty decent. It can stick to any surface, making deployment quite easy because it can go pretty much anywhere. The damage is quite high and it has high pin, letting it take out higher tier targets easily. And the crowd control effect can be helpful sometimes. I say sometimes because the moment the mine explodes, the crowd control effect ends, the lure effect ends. So if you're using it to distract a large group, it's going to explode very quickly, if not immediately, and the crowd control effect really doesn't do much if it ends right away. It just kind of feels awkward to use right now because I feel like I'm using it more to take out armored targets than using it to actually lure away enemies, which I feel like is kind of its design purpose. I think it's still useful and can be handy in a pinch, but the throwable slot is one of the most powerful slots in your loadout, and there are just so many better options for you, both, for trying to get away from enemies or to distract them. You can use smokes to escape or gas to confuse, or you could just, take thermites and call it a day. Finally, to round out the Warbond, we have the C4 Pack. This gives you a C4 pack with 6 C4 charges and a detonator, so it takes one stratagem slot, your backpack slot, and your support weapon slot for 6 C4 charges. Not exactly the best trade in my opinion, especially when you consider how good some of the support weapons and backpacks really are, but I digress. They explode for 2000 damage with level 7 anti-tank pin in a 3-meter radius. They do exactly what they're made for, and they do it well. You can go around a map and plant C4 on different encampments or objectives, and then detonate them and see your work in all its glory. Or at least that's how it should go in theory and in practice. The C4 charges suffer from the same issues throwing knives have. If you're playing as the host or Helldiver 1, the C4 will be detected every single time and enemies will be alerted and hostile. But if you're not the host and you're playing as any other Helldiver, then they're silent and enemies are completely oblivious to them, letting you actually use the C4 like this and, sneak around like the little saboteur we all want to be. Overall, I feel mixed about it, because it's definitely fun to use, and if you're not playing as the host, it's really strong for the stealth playstyle. On the other hand though, you give up so much for the C4 pack. You don't have a backpack slot anymore, so your mobility and your support weapon options are limited, and you can't even take a support weapon at all because you have to have the detonator. Now, will I use this in the future? Yes. I do think it's fun. On every run and on the harder levels of difficulty when I'm actually trying to grind stuff out, probably not. Now that we've reached the end of the Warbond, I want to rate it on a few scales to get a general idea on how good the Warbond is and if it includes things that you might want to pick up for yourself. And for that, we have 3 categories that I will rate between 1 and 5 Helldiver medals. We have general use, how good is the overall gear in the Warbond on the highest levels of difficulty and how good would it be for a new diver to pick up. Niche, how good is the theme of the overall Warbond, and if it's not good for general use, how good is it for the actual niche of that Warbond, like what the Warbond was going for. And finally, Hell Drip. This one is completely subjective, but I know some people really do just care about how good the armor looks, and for me, I do consider it when I'm looking at a new Warbond, so I wanted to throw that on here and rate that as well. Let's start with general use. For me, it's going to be 1 medal. This is the Stealth Warbond, and that's very clear. There's a better alternative for every piece of the gear in this Warbond if you plan on just going loud and blowing stuff up, which is what 90% of the players do, and what 90% of the game wants you to do. If you don't like stealth, this Warbond doesn't have much for you in ways of gear that you'll actually use or gear that you'll find powerful. For niche, I'm going to give it 4 medals. If you like stealth diving and that's your preferred way to play, this is an instant pickup. The reduced signature armor passive is the best stealth passive in the game now in my opinion. The R72 sensor marksman rifle is probably the best stealth weapon, with the AR-59 suppressor assault rifle being a great backup choice if you're not too great at stealth, or maybe just want to run stealth like in public dives where things might not always go so well. The C4 pack and the lure mines definitely lean into the flavor of stealth and are fun to use, though they might not replace your main stealth kit on higher levels of difficulty. I think overall, it fulfills its niche quite well. Finally, we have the Hell Drip category. For me, a stealth fanboy, it's getting 4 medals. I absolutely love the RS92 Shadow Paragon armor set, and it will be my main armor set from here on out. The RS67 Null Cypher armor set also looks great, while giving you that fantastic reduced signature armor passive, but on a medium armor set. I also want to point out the weapons, the 2 primaries. They look freaking cool and really lean into that Spec Ops or like stealth unit feel, and I just honestly think that they are my favorite looking weapons in the game. Like they knocked it out of the park on the looks in this Warbond. And that's going to be it for this Super Earth approved broadcast. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel for more Warbond breakdowns and gameplay, and leave a comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the new Warbond and if you'll be picking it up for yourself. I'm Operative Arthdale, and I will see you in the next broadcast.